This matter is before the court today for the purpose of a post-termination review hearing.
Ms. Foster, can you give us an update, please?
Yes, Sheila, over this reporting period, recently moved to the St. John's in Virginia. That move occurred on 3/6 of 2026. The agency had a meeting with MCI on 2/3 of 2026 in which they discussed moving her to Virginia, and the team was able to share their opinion on it and stuff like that, which they took into consideration. And then on 2/5, they sent out their final decision where they decided to move her to Virginia and did want to see that move happen. I served the DHS 30 to the caregiver on 2/9 of 26, in which she appealed the move. There was a foster care review board hearing on 2/23 of 26, and the foster care review board agreed with the foster mom on not moving Sheila. And then MCI came back and they maintained their decision on moving Sheila. And so the move occurred on 3/6 of 26. She appears to be doing well. ICPC, the workers in Virginia, have been able to go out and see her since she's been there. They've done 2 home visits so far. One was on Monday and then one was on March 10th. We've been working. She did have a well child since she's been there on 3/17 of 26. They're working on getting a referral for her for therapy, but they've been kind of struggling to find a place that will accept her Medicaid with her being there. And so that's something we're working on getting established for her. She has a dental appointment. Oh, and then also at the well child, they thought maybe she had some cavities, but she is scheduled for a dental appointment in May. Mrs. St. John asked if she should be seen sooner, and the pediatrician said that she should be fine to just attend the appointment in May. Like, it didn't seem urgent enough to get her seen sooner, but she did let us know about that. And then I think that's it so far. Yeah.
Okay, so I know they're still working on getting the therapy set up. Do you have any idea of a time frame for that or what that's going to look like?
I don't right now, but I know it is something the agency wants to see her in. And so we have been working with the St. John's to try and figure that out. I don't know. I think it was suggested too to see if the ICPC or the Virginia workers knew anything or knew of any resources or places that would work well. And so I can follow up on that, but I don't believe at this time there's been anything set up.
Okay, and you will continue to follow up on that and keep the team updated?
I will, yes.
Okay, and have you had the opportunity to see the child since the move?
I have not, no.
Okay, but it's your understanding she's adjusting well or doing okay?
It seems like she is, yes.
Okay, and is there any contact, now that she's moved, is there any sibling contact?
Sibling contact, no, not at this time.
Is that something that is going to try to be facilitated?
Yes, I will try and facilitate that. I know we had troubles with scheduling issues right before she moved with Mr. Malone, and so I can try and see what we can make work going forward.
Okay, and were the issues that he just wasn't willing to facilitate that?
He wanted to be present for the visit that we talked about having before Sheila moved, and then his dates didn't line up with the dates that Sheila was available.
Okay. And is there any plan in place for her to have contact with the prior caregiver, Miss Scott?
Yes, they've been doing twice a week video calls, and then we discussed as a team to slowly wean her off the video calls with Miss Scott. It seems like they're going well so far, but that's what was recommended by her infant toddler therapist here in Michigan, and then also what Miss Scott was comfortable with.
Was the process of weaning her off, right?
It's only a couple a week for the first. I don't remember exactly what the schedule is, but we're starting off with 2 a week for now, and I think that's going for a month, and then slowly reducing the frequency of them.
Okay, and were you aware that they just recently had suggested to stop the calls now?
No, I don't think I knew that.
Okay, is that something that we could follow up with the therapist here, or is she not able to weigh in on that now that the move has taken place?
I'm not not sure if she'd be able to weigh in on that, but I can look into that. Yes.
Okay. And what are your recommendations at this time?
It's respectfully recommended that Sheila remain an MCI ward with a goal of adoption and committed to MCI for adoption planning, that Sheila remain in a licensed foster home or an approved relative placement, and that this case be reviewed in 90 days.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Very good, and I don't have any additional questions at this time either. Thank you. You may step down from the stand and you may call your next witness, Ms. Dubus.
Thank you. I'd like to call Carrie Hansen, please.
All right, Ms. Hanson, if you'd please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony today will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Hansen, can you give us an update on where things stand from your perspective with the case?
Yes, so the initial assessment for Mr. Malone was edited, routed to my supervisor, so I'm just waiting for that to be approved. Ms. Scott's initial report was also completed and routed to my supervisor, and I'm waiting on edits for that. And I only have a few more things to finish up on the St. John's initial report before that can be routed for approval and edits. The Kentucky relatives recently, I believe it was Monday, rescinded their consideration, so they are no longer a competing party. However, MCI instructed me to reach out to the paternal grandmother. I did so today, and she did verbally state her interest in being considered for adoption. So that consideration form has been sent to her, and I'm just waiting to receive the signed copy back before figuring out how to proceed with the process moving forward for her. I also can share a little of an update. I wasn't able to connect with Morgan prior to this, but MCI did state that the contact with Ms. Scott was to cease. Our plan for that was we did 2 video calls the week after she was placed. I sent an email to the team. We discussed what the plan should be. So there was no contact the week after that. And then our plan was to move forward was for 4 weeks, there would be 1 phone call per week. And then there would be 1 phone call every other week for a month, and then once a month. MCI's reasoning for discontinuing those was so that Sheila can bond with the St. John's and focus on that relationship. They did not give a time frame for when we can start that contact again, so I will need to reach out and figure that out from them.
Okay, and then just so I understand correctly, was the initial plan for the phone calls that was discussed with her with therapy here in Michigan, correct?
So the therapist was added onto the email, yes. However, because of the issues that have resulted from not being able to find a therapist who will take the insurance, I did reach out to the therapist and ask if she could provide some kind of transitional services. That was our understanding based on what she had stated prior to the move. However, she emailed me back and stated that she's closed out Sheila's case and she will not be providing any services to her. So.
Okay, so what she was not able to weigh in then on the situation with the phone calls, is that accurate?
She did not respond to the email thread, no.
Okay, and what is your position on that?
I think that the plan that we came up with was conducive. I gained input from both Ms. Scott and Jenny St. John after the first week of those 2 initial calls, and it didn't appear that there was any negative results of that contact. I do have a little hesitation as far as stopping them due to potential feelings of abandonment that Sheila may experience, which is what I communicated with MCI, and ultimately they ruled against that.
Okay, and I know this is a hard question and I don't know why I always ask this, but if from an adoption standpoint, do you have any idea of what we're looking at for time frame at this point?
So I did until today, when we now have a new potential competing party. I would hope that within the next 6 months we can get some sort of decision, but again, I'm not entirely sure. With Miss Scott's report just waiting to be approved, and then the St. John's almost completed. I am making progress, and those second reports can hopefully be completed quickly. But with the introduction of a new potential party, that's going to cause another delay in being able to submit the consent request.
Okay, and then the new party, the grandma, she was the party that was involved at the onset of the case, right?
I believe so at some point earlier in the case, she was, yes.
Okay, and it's my understanding that she kind of bowed out throughout that process. So that being said, I mean, how long do you wait to move forward? I mean, if she doesn't submit her request, how long do you wait for that before we can just move forward with the parties that we have?
I'll have to look at policy to verify. I don't think we can until I have something written, like a signature, then technically it's not an additional party, though it was stated verbally is my understanding. So if I don't receive that form back, then we can proceed with Ms. Scott and the St. John's and Mr. Malone.
Okay, and what are your recommendations at this time?
My recommendations are that the court find that reasonable efforts have been made towards the goal of adoption and that another permanency hearing be scheduled within 90 days.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, and my question is the paternal grandmas who we've been referring to, or at least I'm seeing in the reports, as the Kentucky home or Kentucky family.
No, that was a different fictive kin. That
Oh,
was the Kentucky family was the family that Sheila resided with prior to coming into care for about 3 months. To my understanding, the mother dropped her off with these relatives when she was about 3 months old and then went back and picked her up at about 6 months. So those are the Kentucky relatives, and then the maternal grandmother is or separate, or the paternal grandmother is separate.
and where's the paternal grandma located?
She's currently located in Kansas.
Oh, boy, could the case get any more geographically complicated in terms of this relative search? I think is the thing that comes to mind here, and all the interstate compact issues we're encountering here. So, okay, all right, and yeah, I think that that's the totality. And where do we stand with the paternal grandma's application? They've just initiated it and but haven't done any of the steps yet.
So I just had a verbal conversation with her where she's expressed her interest. I emailed her the consideration form that needs to be signed and returned to me. So if she signs and returns it to me, then she will officially be another competing party.
And then she still has to jump through all the, of course, hoops with
Yeah.
ICPC of background and in that stuff. So, and has
Yes.
Kentucky dropped out?
Yes, they rescinded their consideration on Monday. So I have that rescinded signature in that form. So they're done.
Well, we traded Kentucky for an unknown in Kansas. You know, it seems to me,
Yeah.
gosh, this is crazier than free agency in the NFL, unfortunately. So, um, yeah, okay. Well, I think I understand. You know, and my own personal experience. I did an ICPC adoption of my own daughter without any competing parties, or at least at the end of the day, there were none, you know, that stayed in and out of Florida, and it took a long time. So, and this is, you know, viewing to me at least like it may be a super long time. So, and I take it that your recommendations when they went to the MCI, unfortunately I'm hobbled here for some reason. I know partly why it is I don't have my um, clerk who's worked on the NA cases to give me hard copies of these reports if they came in. She's been on medical leave, so I only have partial reports here. I have the CASA report. What was your recommendation to the MCI before they made this decision to move the child to Virginia?
Are you asking me, Your Honor?
Yeah, that would be you, Miss Hanson.
Okay. My recommendation to MCI was to wait to make a decision to move until the assessments had been completed and the consent request was submitted.
The consent request being the consent to adopt
Yes.
from Virginia.
Well, so after the assessments are completed for all of the parties, I then have to go into the system and route what we call the consent request with all of the assessments in there, termination orders, things like that, their requirements, and that gets routed to MCI. They then review everything and make a decision.
And that's supposedly what they did here, or don't you think they had time to do that full review?
I believe they reviewed the ICPC report. They requested that be sent, so I did send that to them. So I believe Diana, superintendent, reviewed that prior to making her decision to move the child.
Okay. And I mean, basically, I mean, from my read of this is that MCI, who at least from my prior research into this and other cases, that, has essentially jurisdiction over the adoption portion of the case. I'm, kind of supervising the welfare of the child awaiting adoption, but the adoption decision making goes to MCI. Basically overruled the ruling on appeal anyway of the Foster Care Review Board, and it decided that a very quick placement in Virginia was the best course of action here.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, yeah, that's from what I can glean out of the reports that I have, that happened, and I was a little shocked by it as well. I assumed that because originally the Foster Care Review Board, I did review their initial report, and basically it said, gee, Judge, we think something ought to happen faster here, but didn't necessarily land on a course of action. And then, or perhaps it reviewed, I can't, what did the initial Foster Care Review Board ruling state? If you recall, Miss Hanson.
Are you talking about the appeal, this recent appeal?
No, I know the appeal recommended staying with Miss Scott. Did the original one say place with? I can't even recall. I do recall reading the submission and the ruling or the letter from the Foster Care Review Board, but my recall of it was more ambiguous. That Judge, we think something ought to happen faster here, but still held the parties. It identified Miss Scott and the St. John's as the competing parties, and um, did it come down clearly and say that the placement should be with St. John's?
From my understanding, based on reading the Foster Care Review Board report, they stated no, that Sheila should remain in her current placement with St. John or with Miss Scott, and not be moved to the St. John's. They had concerns about splitting the siblings up, being so far away. There was also a argument of the current time that Sheila had spent with Miss Scott, and that long duration and that relationship and the potential break in that. Those were the main things that I took away from that report and their decision.
Okay, yeah, similar to what I took away as well. And when MCI, do they issue a written decision on these?
She sent an email.
Okay, is that part of the file?
If it's not, we can certainly get that to you.
Ms. Dubus, remind me, was that one of the exhibits?
Not today, so I don't, because the last one we did, I believe, is a file review maybe, so I would have to double check, but I can submit it if need be.
Oh, you did receive the email?
Yes, I did.
Very good. Yeah, would you do that? And I am now regretting my decision to make that last one a file review since so much happened since then. But I do recall there were multiple other things, yeah, going on that it seemed like the right decision at the time. And this is my last NA case from my swing through the family courts, and or no, I think it's yeah, this is my last one. And yeah, now I'm regretting not doing it in person because so much transpired. So yes, if you would submit that as one of the exhibits for completeness of the file here,
Hmm.
that'd be helpful. So
Sure.
okay, and I think that's all my questions, unless you have any follow-ups on mine, Ms. Dubus.
I do not, thank you.
All right, very good. Then thank you. Uh, Miss, my screen is also, I changed computers here. It's not giving me all my mini names as to who I'm addressing. Our adoption worker, Miss Hanson, you may step down from the witness stand. Any other witnesses at this time, Ms. Dubus?
No, Your Honor.
All right, and any statement I'll hear. First, I do see we do have. It looks like Mr. St. John is present. Let me hear from Mr. St. John.
Hello, sir. Things have been going really well with Shy. The transition went very smoothly. She's started soccer. The first game will be Saturday, and she's been enjoying being at the fields and playing with her new teammates. She has been starting to go up to new kids and introduce herself, so her social skills are improving. Physical skills are improving as well. Able to do somersaults on the ground now instead of just on the trampoline, and so she's been doing well in every area. Been assimilating well into our family again, and just been having really good interactions with the kids, and even with the ones that have moved out of the house. We have some older children that have moved out of the house and are in Florida, and she's been identifying them as her brothers and just assimilating well as a family unit. So
Is she the youngest in your family, Mr. St. John? Is in her current age?
correct. The next one older than her is 5, and she just turned 3.
Okay, all right. So they're not a tremendously different age gap. And where about in Virginia are you located, Mr. St. John?
About an hour and a half southwest of DC.
Okay.
It's over there in Elkwood, but yeah, it's southwest of DC.
I haven't been to Elkwood. I've been to Charlotte. Well, that's west of DC, right? But not or Charlottesville, I guess, is Virginia. Charlotte's North Carolina. So uh, Charlottesville's where the University of Virginia is, if I remember. So very good. And is Chai been able to find any counselor in the area that she can see on a regular basis?
So we've been working through that. Jenny has a lot more detail on that she can share. But they've been having issues trying to find one that will take the insurance. We've tried to do out of pocket, but then they had um, issues that there wasn't a request by her PCM for one. And so Jenny can fill you in on that better than I can.
Is Jenny available for the
Yeah,
hearing? Is
she's
she?
in.
Oh, she's there. Is she on the same as you, the same video?
Separate phone.
Oh, okay. All right. Not seeing her in my
I'm here, sir.
lineup here. Oh, right. Do you hear Mrs. St. John?
Yeah, I'm here, sir.
Oh, okay. I got you. All right. Well, anything that you'd like to give as input?
Yeah, just on the therapy side, we have, been shaking all the trees trying to get this worked out. Before she moved here, we had found several that hypothetically would take her, but then once she actually got placed here, whether there was a wait list or a diagnosis difference, we found that a lot of the ones for her age group only geared at autistic diagnoses. So if she wasn't on the spectrum, they didn't have a place in their practice for her. So we've like Stephen said, we tried doing self-pay, but with self-pay, they said, well, we don't actually have a need-based diagnosis because the one provided didn't align with any of what they said they could accept. So that was really odd. But we did find one that would accept her out of pocket, which we're still going to use that as a last place if we can't get something else worked out. But I did find a place last week that we submitted a ton of like questionnaires and just like trying to see if she meets what they feel like they can provide to see if it'd be the best route for her. And then our caseworker and supervisor here has been really working hard on it as well. And we did find someone who does it virtually, which originally virtually was not the way anybody thought would be a good way probably to go. But because she has been doing virtual visits for so long now with us and other relatives, it's not a new thing for her. They just figured she would get more from in person. But we did find someone who has had some success, specifically with a 3-year-old doing virtual ones. So if nothing else pans out in the next week or two, she is willing to take the case and at least, do check-ins and also give us an opportunity to ask questions or figure out how to navigate, emotional needs going forward if need be.
Very good. And is she doing a preschool or like, what's her, if you can just fill me in on what she's doing educationally, if anything?
Yeah, no, she just turned 3, but we
Oh,
have
that's
been doing
right. She's
some.
3-year-old. I all of a sudden when your husband mentioned the 5-year-old, I promoted Shiloh to 5, and now I recall she's only 3. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're great. But we have been working on the traditional things for that age group, so she can now count between 11 and 20, and now she's able to not just name colors, but actually associate them quite well. And she's been working on some skip counting, and she's really taken some pleasure in like trying to do dot to dot. Obviously, she can't comprehend all of that, but before she didn't have the patience to really like pay attention to what she should be doing on paper, just what she wanted to do, just free art. But lately, she's been having an interest in trying to understand the dot to dot and that sort of thing. So she's been making some really good improvements. When she went to the doctor, of course, they, because she's a new patient, ran the gamut on everything. And he was really surprised at how well she was doing and felt like she was advanced for her age. So he was really pleased considering her background to see her carry on such good conversations with him and answer, thoughtful questions and just kind of go through that. He was really, really pleased. So that was good to hear.
Well, that's great. And you have homeschooled your other kids, and I take it then you're homeschooling her as the preschool. That's the plan right now.
Yes, sir. I had originally went to school for early childhood education, and then when we had our own children, it didn't make much sense for me to go teach other people's kids and send my kids for someone else to teach. So we began homeschooling.
Got it. And Shai, remind me how many you've got. Shai's your youngest of how many?
We had 12 biological, and Shy makes 13.
Wow. Okay. My adopted daughter made 10. I thought I had a large group. I'll remember that. So thank you for your willingness to participate. Uh, and the last question I had for you, and I'll also allow Mr. St. John to weigh in if he thinks there's anything to add. What are your feelings on the ongoing phone calls back here with Miss Scott? And Miss Scott is present, as you know, probably for this hearing. She's participating as well. So what are your feelings? I'm a little uneasy with the way, they just got arbitrarily ended. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it was helpful originally because Shy was really close with her sister there, Sutton. And so she was always interested in, is Sutton at school today? Did they have a snow day? That kind of thing. And so it was helpful to be able to tell her, hey, we're going to call and check on her on such and such a day and see what she's been up to. But I don't know how much background you have and what's being said, but there was a lot of allegations made by the foster home against us. And
Yeah,
so
no,
there's been,
I do have some of that makes it through to the reports, right? That she said
right.
I was being spanked on the hand or some, sort of, pinched as a method of physical discipline. And I can see that would create some strain between, of course, the kid's blissfully unaware of who's reporting what to anyone. They just know who's on the screen in the moment. But yeah, I
Well,
can see where that would create some stress.
I didn't want to interrupt, Your Honor, but it actually got catapulted to much more severe than that, where police showed up at our home because of allegations made by the foster mom, and the police officer said it came from her. And so, as much as we can carry on those conversations and we'll do what we need to for Shy's sake, it no longer feels like a safe thing for the rest of our family if these allegations are going to continue. And although the police so far as we know, has found everything completely unfounded, it has caused great uneasiness for everyone involved.
Okay, well, thank you for adding. I was unaware that that had occurred in Virginia um, as well. That didn't make it its way into my report at least. So, okay, no, that's helpful to know because, like I say, I don't have any say. The Children's Institute, the Michigan Children's Institute, has sole jurisdiction of the adoption choice. I can weigh in on placement and pre-adoption things like that, but frankly, here, because of the involvement of the Foster Care Review Board and the Michigan Children's Institute, my view is a lot of those decisions have been, lifted out of my hands and are being done at the state of Michigan level, as it's their prerogative to do whether I agree or disagree. So it's helpful to have that additional information. Anything else you'd like to say, Mrs. St. John?
Sorry, there was some traffic, so I muted it. I know that y'all are heavily invested and have loved and cared about her, and this has been an ongoing case. And so just wanted to say the other side of it, where she is, like Stephen said, it's just amazing to watch her grow, and she's just thriving and doing really well, and watching her bond with not only friends but soccer players, and just to see that fear dissipate, where she is, just walking up to people her age and say, "Hey, you want to kick the ball?" And that's just something that has taken a long time to get there. And so I don't want to lose the sight that side of her, although there is a lot of issues and complexities. She's an amazing little girl, and she's so resilient for what she's been through, and it's just a blessing to get to be a part of watching her grow.
All right. Well, thank you, Mrs. St. John. That is reassuring from my standpoint. And Mr. St. John, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think Jenny covered everything pretty well. I think she voiced the concerns that we have, and also the progress that Shy is making has been very, very good as far as I can tell. And if there is a need in the future to, reach back to the foster home and do those kind of visits, we're definitely open to do what we need to for Shy's case, as we have been for the last 2 years. But as long as she's doing well and adjusting well, I think the way forward is probably best for now. But obviously, whatever you all decide, we'll work with.
Sure. No, and I take it that it's a scenario where if, for example, Shy for a week asked, I want to check in with my big sister and house, whatever, that at least would be open to considering reopening that communication. I mean, if she was expressing that need.
Just to be clear, we did not ask for this or advocate for this. We didn't know anything about it. We were complying with the orders and had actually planned for a visit that night when we received the orders that they were discontinued.
Okay.
Any of that. We were not aware of that. We do have some videos that, because this has been going on for so long, we do have some videos that Miss Scott had provided of Sutton and Braley talking to her and, just enjoying the snow and that sort of thing. So that night instead, because I didn't want to, because she knew they were supposed to be calling, I didn't want to just leave her hanging. So, of course, we have those videos. So she was able to watch those. Yeah.
No, that was a good idea.
Yeah, and she has pictures of all of her family and people she loves in Michigan, and there's never been any I don't want to lessen the transition, because who knows the depths it goes, but outwardly she's happy 95% of the time, unless she's not getting her way, like a toddler is. But
Yes.
she's very happy. And then when she is sad, the things that we've had in place for a long time, both ways, have been working, that, your so-and-so loves you, and would you like to look at these pictures? And, oh, what's the last thing you remember doing? Oh yeah, that was so fun. And then she's off playing, and there's never any sadness. And yes, definitely we would be the first to be reaching out and saying, hey, she needs some help here. But so far she's been doing really well. Her biggest concern has been Serenity, that she can't have contact with, just because you know, those pictures were available as well. And I didn't feel right putting
Sure.
those away because she has a right to that sister. But on the other hand, it does bring sadness. So that was one question I forwarded to the agency here and there, was just like, is it best to, oh, actually, I don't think I have to miscarry yet, but is it best to take down this picture so it's not always in her face that she can't talk to her sister, or is it better to help her heal by saying, yep, that's your sister? And so far what we got back was, yeah, this is part of life and just helping her. And as long as it's not making her distraught or anything, as long as it's just a passing, oh, I want to talk to my sister. I'm sorry, you can't talk to her right now, but you know, she's this old and she's probably enjoying doing this thing. And if that's good enough, they said that it was probably best to just let that play out. So that's been healing and doing well for her right now.
Good. No, that sounds like reasonable advice to me. And yeah, I'm certainly not a child psychologist, but having contended with some similar issues with my own adopted daughter, I think, age appropriate honesty is probably always the best policy throughout a case like this. So, but I'm not going to say that's always an easy thing to accomplish. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Ms. St. John. It's a pleasure to meet you both. I think you may have participated in prior hearings, but I don't know if I've had a chance to hear from you because of my time constraints. I'm fortunate this afternoon, because my one remaining family case, I had some extra time to get to hear your input and, reassurance that this little girl's in a good place. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you. All right, Ms. Scott, you're also present. Any input, and I understand, I'd love to say I totally understand how the appellate rules work, and there's no such thing, of course, as an unappealable legal decision in Michigan. They all can be appealed, but frankly, and I've only been through this process with competing parties and disagreement once before, and it was not an interstate, matter. It was an in-state matter, so there was a wrinkle in it where the Children's Institute, um, ruled in a way that sort of surprised everyone participating. And what I learned through my legal research in that case is that the Children's Institute, at least at this level, the trial court level, where the adoption decision is made, has almost sole jurisdiction. Now, how you appeal that, I'm sure there's a method, but I'm not equally sure that it's out of my pay grade. So, having all that said, and assuming that you have good advice from your legal counsel, Ms. Scott, anything you'd like to say today?
Yeah, first off, I believe in a sovereign God, and throughout this entire case, I've just been asking him to do what's best for everybody involved, and I can rest in that. So, yeah, it does seem strange that MCI, one sole person, has so much power at a specific stage. And I do believe they can kind of use that to exploit a case at this level, but that is a
Well, I guess
legislative
probably
failure.
MCI's argument would be,
So,
well, we sit over here in Lansing and we look at these things objectively, and that's why
yeah,
we're better than trial courts and the local agencies, et cetera, at making these decisions, because
yeah, I just think
yeah,
I know that post consent being given from MCI, there is a legal channel, through the
yep,
Court of Appeals Section 45s, even though I've come to find even a Section 45 is unwinnable, really, because all MCI needs to prove is that they
had a basis.
they took one factor into account versus actually weighing all the strengths and weaknesses. But we serve a sovereign God, and I can be content with that and trust him. No, my main concern in Shai's case was just the level of trauma that she's experienced. She scores a 9 on the ACE,
Yep.
and that's all objective stuff. There's nothing subjective in an ACE. And what I was seeing as far as trauma behaviors, and just can she actually make another move without, those lifelong consequences. So that
Yep.
was my main concern. Otherwise, I would not ever have even filed an intent. I've never been part of a competing party adoption before. I don't wish to do it again. But I'm always called to do what I feel is going to be best for any child in my home. So, no, and I do want to say, just for the record, because Jenny and Stephen, we've never discussed this between us, and I think there are things that are being believed that aren't true. And all I can do is speak truth. I can't bring you back to the incidents and play them if I don't have them on video. And I can't force you to believe something. We all use our experiences and to discern truth. But I am a mandatory reporter. If a child says something, I have to report it. Back at the beginning, the first time Shy disclosed what she called a spanking, I brought that up with Morgan, and my goal was just to make sure that the discipline policy of Michigan foster care been gone over with you guys, because you're from Virginia. I didn't know what had been discussed, and this is what she was sharing. So it was actually the agency that came back to me and said that has to be reported to CPS, and I was like, why? There's no marks. I'm not concerned, or I don't feel this is probably abusive. And they said, well, she shared it and it's against policy, it has to be reported. So that was reported by the agency. After the January visit, there were 2 other instances that she reported that had to be reported then.
Yeah, so in other words, if you make a report, which you're required as both a foster parent and because of your profession to make it to the agency, then that's into the gears turning, as it were, on this mandatory reporting chain that in effect never stops until it's investigated by some agency on the other side and determined. Yeah.
And
No,
the last one was more of a sexual connotation, and that one was actually in the middle of a 15-minute what was videoed on my phone. And I actually called Carrie and said, I have this. I don't know what to do with it. I need guidance. And she came out to my house, listened to the entire 15-minute video so she could see this was said. I don't know exactly what was meant by it, but there were no leading questions. It wasn't anything. And with none of this did I ever ask a leading question or prompt any of this. So
and
I
to
just
clarify,
want
Ms.
you,
Scott, this is a conversation between you and the child.
Yeah. So I just want Stephen and Jenny to understand that I have not made any allegations against you guys that have come from me. I've just had to report what Shy has
What
stated,
she said, and
asked
then
for
that kind
guidance.
of takes effect. Can you give me a flavor, Ms. Scott, as to before the calls ended, what did those look like when you were on the video calls with Shy and the St. John's?
Yeah, we just did 2. So she left here on a Friday. We did one on a Tuesday evening and then one on a Saturday morning. And yeah, we were able to keep them light. They each lasted about 5 minutes.
Yeah, hard to keep a 3-year-old's attention on anything for much more than 5 minutes.
Yeah. No, the very first one, as soon as she saw our faces, because I do it with my 2 daughters who she's very close to. In her mind, they're her sisters, right?
Yep.
And yeah, at the very beginning, she looked like she was about to cry, and I just said, Shy, how you doing? We miss you. And then she got a big smile and she was happy the rest of the call. So for both of them, she was outside, she was happy, we kept the conversation light, and yeah, they seemed to go fine. So
sounded kind of positive, right? Like you would hope for, a long distance check-in with a little kid.
So my main concern, obviously she's in the St. John's home. Unless something big were to happen, she's going to stay there and she's going to be adopted by them. That's basically what MCI is saying when they move a child to an adoptive home, even if it's a foster care placement in a competing party. But so my main concern is just that, with the levels of trauma she's experienced, with that ACE score, that she's not feeling like, oh, another relationship where I've been abandoned.
Meaning the separation from you and your daughters.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You want her to know that, of course, you
I
love her.
wanted to know we love her, we'll always love her.
Yeah,
And
want to
I
be
think,
there for her. And yeah.
yeah, I think 24/7 with the St. John, she's going to automatically learn this is my home, this is my family.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I felt like the
Kind of abruptness of it was
yeah, the plan that the team had come up with amongst themselves, I felt was a good plan to kind of wean those slowly. Um, so yeah, I don't want, and we had said at the beginning, okay, what does post-move contact look like? And I said, well, traditionally calls have been stressful for her, and I don't want to create more stress. So I said, what if we started with the video chats and then just see how she does? If they're stressful, we can stop. If they're not, we can come up with a plan that's best for her.
yeah. And I guess
So
what I'm
that's my
hearing,
heart, is just
yeah.
that whatever's
And
best
those
for
two
her.
5-minute calls that you did have were pretty non-eventful and lighthearted, I guess
Yeah.
you would describe them as.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and of course, my expectation on both those, you're and your daughters are on one end, and Chai is a 3-year-old with the St. John's on the other end. It's you talk about a supervised, setting where everyone's on other, it's not like there's much anything nefarious going on. These are just, after all, hey, we're still out here. Love you. I want to send our best wishes and wave. And I can tell you we had a snow day, and kind of keep that to enable, because I think your assessment on adoption is probably accurate. That she's very likely to remain with St. John's at the end of the day because of MCI, and right, to give her that transitional period out of your family where she's been for 2 years. And I know, because I've supervised the case for that whole time, that or presided over the case for that whole time. Supervised is the wrong word. That you've provided excellent care and a loving environment for her. And of course, right, that would be something that even in the 3-year-old mind, you might occasionally wonder, I wonder what happened to those people, I want to check in with them and see that they're okay and things like that. So I kind of get it. I'm a little confused. Like I say, the MCI process and the foster care review board operate largely outside the purview of the local court. Their system's designed to oversee us and make sure we're doing things at the right speed in the case of the foster care review board. And then secondly, they take the adoption decision out of our hands for a whole plethora of hopefully well thought out reasons at the MCI level here. So, and, frankly, in the other case, it was a terribly difficult decision that, to remove a kid from their grandparents and put them with a non-relative adoption, but to keep the siblings together. I was pretty frankly glad the MCI took that, and that I didn't have to, determine whether or not the siblings split, that the grandparents they wanted the daughter and not the son. And I was like, boy, that struck me out of a equally traumatic home situation that these kids were removed from. So yeah. In some respects, I guess I've been grateful that the MCI does put itself in there and say, hey, Judge, you don't need to make every hard call in these cases. We'll apply our expertise supposedly, and come out with the best decision based on factors that are scientifically reviewed. And I suppose the expertise of the people at the Children's Institute, which by finding out that there is an appeal from that, you're more educated in kind of post MCI determinations than I am, though I'm not surprised to hear, because as with the decision of most state agencies, as long as they have some factual basis for their decision, it's difficult but not impossible to overturn those decisions. So, and because I review other Secretary of State and Liquor Control Board and other agencies that make decisions that occasionally come in front of me, and the standard is a familiar one. So, well, thank you for your input, Ms. Scott. And like I say, some of the developments here were a surprise to me, and made me regretful that I hadn't scheduled an in-person hearing, because I don't know that I would have been brought up to speed on everything that developed anyway, because the hearing was in January before all of this, seemingly turned into a very quick series of events in February. But nonetheless, I feel like I'm playing catch up to a degree now with the case. So I appreciate your being on top of it, Ms. Scott, and I do want to thank you. I know that, whatever else happens in the case, that you devoted 2 years of love, care, and absolute best to this little girl while she was with you. And I've never doubted that for a moment of the case. And I'm sure everyone else sitting in the hearing would recognize that too. So, all right. Well, I'll hear any closing statement, Ms. Dubus, and then I can issue my order.
Sure. And Your Honor, I just want to make sure, just so the file is accurate in the record, and I will resubmit these to the court just in case they don't have them. But for exhibits, I just want to make sure, I think I left off with 6, and I'll forward this report, but that's the foster care appeal decision from the Foster Care Review Board.
Yep.
And then for 7 is the report from
And I
March
did
2nd
get
from
the appellate
MCI.
decision. They send that directly to me, so I had the appellate decision.
Okay,
The
so it
person-
sounds like you may just need the MCI one.
I do need. I haven't seen anything
Okay.
from the MCI. Didn't they? Apparently don't have me on their distribution list. So.
Okay, then I will make sure that the court gets that.
And my understanding is, Ms. Dubus, you were opposed to that conclusion that MCI came up with as well, but MCI did what it's going to do anyway. So
Yes, and quite frankly, I mean, I'm disappointed in the way MCI handled this. Myself, the CASA, foster care, I mean, even the director was there, and everybody had opposed the move. Not any offense to the St. John's, everybody's appreciative that they love and care for Shy as well. But just as the court is aware, I mean, this child's gone through significant trauma. She's been with Miss Scott for 2 years, and just the way that it was handled and the abruptness of it, I think it was really just relied on policy and a family placement, and I don't think it was really looked at as it should have been as far as the best interest of Shy. I think that we should have waited until there was actual consent for an adoption and then moved her. And then to find out yesterday too, just about the abrupt shutting down of the phone calls, I think that that's not in her best interest as well. There was a plan in place to kind of slowly taper those calls off, and I just am not real comfortable with the fact that it's just done without any input from a professional or anything like that. I mean,
to clarify, that order came from MCI?
Yes.
Okay.
It was just sent to us as an email saying that the calls are done, and
Can you please mark that as number 8 and include it in the file as well?
Yes.
I don't have that either, so it would be helpful. When what I'm trying to do here is document, the file as well as I can, so that if it does get appealed, at least there's a total record to be examined by the reviewing court. So
yes. I had the opportunity to speak with Miss St. John today. She gave me some updates regarding Shy. She sent me some pictures of her, and Shy is the pictures she sent me. She's doing activities. She's smiling. She does appear to be happy. And Miss St. John said she is adjusting well. So that is a relief to hear that. And I'm going to do a Zoom visit with Miss St. John and Shy on Friday as well. So I'll be able to see her face to face. I'm glad she's adjusting well. It sounds like the St. John's, Miss St. John specifically, she's on top of dealing with getting that therapy set up. They are running into some roadblocks, which isn't surprising given the interstate issue, but she is staying on top of that and working on getting that in place. So I am thankful for that. But at this point she's moved, so we just got to hope the adjustment continues to go well. There's no doubt that the St. John's and Miss Scott both care about Shy, and I'm hoping that at some point that maybe, that situation can be repaired a bit, so that way, everybody can stay involved in Shy's life. Because after everything this little girl has experienced, the more people that can be involved and love her, the better. But, just to reiterate what the court said, very thankful for Miss Scott. She provided exceptional care for Shy over the past 2 years, and thankful to the St. John's too. Like I said, it's not very often that we get it where it's competing adoptions. Usually we're waiting for an adoptive family. So it's, nice to see that there are people who love her, want, the best for her. So given that, I just think that we do need to reevaluate the situation with the phone calls and the communication a little better.
Okay. Well, and I don't, frankly, because it's an MCI, when they issue the email, is this like an MCI order that says that much, or is it just it's just well, I guess I'll see the email and I'll make that conclusion myself as to because again, I know MCI, of course, orders placement as they have here and finalizes orders of adoption. Actually I sign off on the order of adoption, but the MCI really is the one that does the evaluation and makes that decision. You know, it's really out of the trial court's hands in almost every case. And however, I have no idea what their authority is in the meantime. It seems like they're counting on me to, maintain the child's day-to-day well-being. It would seem to me that I would agree. A 5-minute phone call every couple of weeks to check in and say hi. We're both, uh, uh, sides of the family, the St. John's and Miss Scott, the parties, potential adoptive parties are present. It can't hurt very much. And, even though parents are going to have to set aside some hard feelings to make it happen, I think it potentially for the child's benefit, it could be a really good thing here. So yeah, I that would be my inclination, would be to restart those. But send me if you can email me a copy of that, Ms. Dubus. I'll take a look at the MCI order and I'll see if I can craft anything that would allow a restarting of those, because it just seems to me that those are innocuous. Those aren't one family spying on the other, anything else. This is a 5-year-old checking in by video with the family she lived with for 2 years. So or a 3-year-old checking in by video. Necessarily going to be a short video call, because you're competing with all kinds of bouncing cartoon characters that also appear on that magical screen. So, that just makes it inherently a short call that's got to be focused on, hey, how you doing? We're all well out here and we still love you, kind of thing. You just want you to know that, and like I say, pretty lighthearted. So I would like to see them resumed if possible. However, I'll examine the MCI superintendent's order and see if I have the authority to allow that as part of my supervision of this case. I'm a little uncertain about that because we are in somewhat uncharted territory, like I say, and I do view this case. Well, you mentioned the CASA, Ms. Dubus. I want to thank Cossack because that's the one report that made it into my file with supplement. So anything to add to what's been said? CASA was here earlier, or weren't they ever here? Did we ever have a CASA rep at the hearing?
I'm
Yes.
here, but I'm not the CASA supervisor
Yeah,
in this case. I'm just covering.
Got it. You're just covering this one. All right. So I take it you probably don't have much to say about it, Ms. Brader.
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. No, I appreciate that, because I will say that the rep who's been Miss Manning on this case right from the start has written excellent reports and an excellent supplement. I've relied heavily on it. It looks like at least what I read from the Foster Care Review Board has listened to Miss Manning as well, and taken her input into consideration. So very least I would like to do is thank you and the rest of the good folks at CASA for your attention to this case. It's been a lengthy one, and Ms. Manning has done a stellar job of doing her job here. So I'm very grateful for it. So, well, and as I said, having presided over this from the beginning, I view it, of course, this child came into care following horrible injuries inflicted on her by her birth mother, for which she was removed. Her birth father has never been in the picture, and both of their rights were terminated, which kind of got us to the point we are today. And and her foster care supervision throughout this case, and it has been one of multiple, thankfully. It's very true that, what's been said is, sometimes it's a struggle to find one related family who's able to take in a child, or a foster family in some cases who's in it for the long haul, who's willing to adopt, because not all foster parents are willing or able to do so. And in this case, we had both of those, and then we've had Kentucky, Kansas, and not even putative dad, but the current dad of part sister in this case, express an interest and then withdraw, at least in the case of Kentucky. And my assumption is here, dad, from what I read in the reports, have withdrawn their interest in this case as adoptive considerations. And that, combined with the medical needs of the child, which have been significant, and the fact that as Ms. Scott points out, this child came into the case, of course, with an extreme level of trauma from that you know, criminal conduct on the behalf of her birth mom, you know, present a lot of high needs and needs for the court to assess, you know, what the proper move going forward. And all of that being in the context of, as I said before, excellent care provided throughout by Miss Scott and her family, you know, for the child here. So, and of course, I supervise her sister as well. So, you know, under our one family, one judge rule for the sister as well. And so I've had the opportunity to observe, you know, the excellent level of care provided by Miss Scott's family throughout. You know, the St. John's, because location in Virginia, but, you know, have been consistent in presence and wanting to keep this child in the family. And I, as a, you know, cousin adopter, I barely qualified as a relative under Florida law for my adoption. Totally understand that drive, that there is huge value, I think, to be derived in being able to have a family member come into your home and being able to talk about those aspects of family history that might be unknown or hard to explain, particularly as a child grows older. Those relationships, in my personal experience, are very critical as well. And as I said, I adopted a little girl into a very large family as well of 9 biological kids, and experienced some of the same things the St. John's described. So I don't want to, in other words, my lack of familiarity with the St. John's home. And to add to my confusion, we have an agency here in Kent County that is DA Blodgett St. John's. So when I read St. John's, it always takes me a couple of minutes to figure out, are we talking about the Kent County agency, or are we talking about the St. John's family in Virginia? I think I finally got that straight, though, now for purposes of this hearing, and an understanding, and I'm gaining an understanding of the love and care that the St. John's desire to provide for this little girl who needs it. You know, whoever's going to provide it, she is a little girl who's, because of her childhood trauma, is going to need to be surrounded by that love throughout her childhood and no doubt into her adult life as well. In this case, I don't think, you know, I have very much choice but to comply, you know, allow the Michigan Children's Institute and rule that the agency is making reasonable efforts here to achieve permanency, because, and I'll note in this case, I did rule, and hence the foster care review boards, that at one point, you know, reasonable efforts weren't being made, and that kind of triggered a little more action on this case, unexpected from my point, but at least it got a response out there, because I think that was the first time I'd ever ruled in that case that there was a point where the reasonable efforts weren't being made to achieve permanency, and now we're to a point where I do believe that they are. It appears that the MCI and, of course, the Interstate Compact for the Protection of Children law is being adhered to in this case, and that, you know, MCI is moving towards permanency and, you know, fulfilling the other state mandate, which is permanency within a reasonable amount of time. You know, and it always occurred to me that, you know, what looks reasonable on paper, it can be way different in the real world. But nonetheless, that's the measuring stick that, you know, agencies and courts use for reasonable time. And this one was beyond that. So ergo, you know, perhaps, you know, more aggressive or faster action by the Michigan Children's Institute that got us to where we are today. So all that being said, I do think that the plan as stated is a reasonable one. I will find that reasonable efforts have been made to achieve permanency in this case, and I will review the matter in 90 days. I'll review the order of the Michigan Children's Institute, and if I can add something to this order to reinstitute the phone calls without trampling on my fellow branches authority at the Michigan Children's Institute, I will do so, because it would seem to me that for everyone involved, you know, and particularly as the Children's Institute is still finalizing a decision, that those serve an important purpose you know, those calls due. So if I can reinstitute them, I'll include those in the order and send that out to Ms. Dubus. So I do appreciate everyone's investment in this case. As I have said before, you know, as a little child, it's hard to imagine a rougher start in life than she had. But you know, the reassuring thing is, you know, a lot of people have come forward and said, "Hey, I'd love this kid and I'd love her to be a part of my life." And compared to some very sad scenarios I faced, it's a huge blessing. So I do greatly appreciate everyone's investment in this case. And despite the emotional up and downs, you know, it takes me through emotional up and downs reading this all on paper. And I can only imagine, particularly Ms. Scott and the St. John's, how the, you know, families who have invested hours and hours of their lives into this little person feel on a day-to-day basis. So I'm grateful for everyone's investment, and thank you for your participation today. With that, we're concluded.
Thank you.